Okay, guys, so today we're going to talk about a new reading strategy called the Thieves strategy. And Thieves is an acronym, and it stands for the title, headings, introduction, every first sentence, visuals, vocabulary, end of chapter questions, and summary. Okay, so acronyms are just a way that you can remember things that you need to do. And this is just a strategy that will help you with looking at informational text or anything that you may have in class. So if you will look below, you will see a link, or you can click on the Thieves strategy and you can open that up. And then you can also click on the other link for ecosystems. And this is the informational text that we're going to be using today to go through this. We're going to be reading about the ecosystem. So the first thing I want you to do is look back at the Thieves strategy. Okay, so for the T, what is the title? What do I know about this topic? And what can I predict based on the title? So let's go back and look here at the ecosystem. So the title is the changing the ecosystem. So think for just a minute before you start reading. What do you already know about the ecosystem? More than likely you've heard about it from a biology class or something like that. But you probably know that it has to do with a community or animals or plants or something like that. So when you first look at the title, Changing the Ecosystem, write down what the title is and then think about what you know. Now, what can we predict from looking at that title, Changing the Ecosystem? So we know just by looking at the title that the ecosystem, for whatever reason, is either going to change, or this article is going to talk about the changing ecosystem. We can already kind of infer what this article is going to be about. All right, so the second thing, if you look back on your Thieves strategy, and I will go back there, the H is look at the headings. What are the different sections of this text, and what do they tell me? So let's look back at the ecosystem. Okay, so I can look at this, and I can already tell that it's got some information here. It's got 2 paragraphs that I need to read. I can look down and it's got a timeline. So I know that something's going to be talking about as far as time-wise. And then there's some questions here at the end. And so what do I know about the headings? Well, there are not really any headings, but I know that there are sections. So I might write down here that there's 2 paragraphs, and then there's also a timeline. So that's probably what I would write down under H. All right, going back to the Thieves, the next one is read the introduction. Can you guess about the text based on the section? So let's go back to the introduction. So the introduction would be right here, this very first paragraph, and it says, a food chain is a series of links between plants and animals. It starts with a plant. The next part of the link is the plant eater. When the prairie plants started to die or be replaced with houses and roads, the animals that depended on them lost their food source. So while the farmers produced more food for people, they broke the animals' food chain, and the animals died or had to move. This was a great mistake. We are paying for that mistake today. And unfortunately, people still keep making the mistake. They keep breaking the food chain. All right, so based on what we just read, let's look back at our Thieves. Our Thieves says, read the introduction. What can you guess? Okay, so after we read that introduction, what do we know? We know that they're going to tell us about what happened to the animals and how building of houses and things like that made a difference, and it prevented the animals from being able to live and thrive. We can also guess that they may tell us some things that we could do to make it better. What do you think? Or it may just be an article that's going to tell us what we've done wrong to the environment. So all of this part part is kind of just when you're making a guess like this, there's no right or wrong answer. But the reason it's so important is it gets your brain moving, and it makes you start thinking about what you're going to be learning. All right, so E, read the first sentence of each paragraph. So let's go back and to our reading here, and we're going to read the first paragraph of the first sentence of each paragraph. So the first one is, a food chain is a series of links between plants and animals. And then this sentence down here, the second sentence of the first sentence of the second paragraph says, a food chain is part of a bigger system called a food web. So reading those two sentences, I know that they're going to be talking a little bit about food chains and the links between plants and animals. So I would go under the F or the E, and write, what did those sentences, how do these sentences shape the text? Well, they shape the text because they kind of tell me what the passage is going to be about. And we're going to be talking about main ideas probably next week. And this is one of the things that we're going to be finding out, is that a lot of times in the first sentence is the main idea sometimes for that paragraph. All right. V is look at the visuals and vocabulary. What did these tell you about important information? All right, let's go back. I don't see a lot of visuals other than, I guess you can consider this timeline a visual. So that's one part. Now, as far as vocabulary, anytime you're reading something and you know it's an informational text, you're going to see words that you may not know. And one of the things I want you to get in the habit of is picking out those words. So let's look back up at this first paragraph here. Most of us probably know all the words in this first paragraph, but let's say we didn't know what a food chain was right here at the very end. They keep breaking the food chain. I might circle that one. And then the second paragraph goes on to talk about the ecosystem, the herbivores, the carnivores. So those are other words that we may not know. Obviously, when you're reading, sometimes you're not going to stop and go look up a dictionary and find out what a word is. Oftentimes, you can kind of figure that out. So you can use prior knowledge, or you can use, maybe you understand prefixes or suffixes that you've had in another class, but that's something to take into effect. All right, now let's go back to the Thieves system. And the next one is E, and it means the end of chapter questions. How can these questions guide my reading? I always tell people, if you're given some stuff to read and then answer questions, I always go look at my questions sometimes before I read the whole thing, because I kind of know what I'm looking for. So if you look back here at the reading and you scroll all the way down, there are two different questions. The first one is, what is the main idea of this passage? And the second one is, underline 5 sentences in the passage that support this idea. Okay, so the first thing I know that I'm going to need to do is figure out what the main idea is. And that's what I would drop down there, because in my Thieves question, it's going to say, which questions are going to guide my reading. So I need to find out what the main idea is of this reading passage. The last one is a summary in your own words. What are the important things to understand and remember? Now, a summary is different than a retelling. What you're going to do is you're going to summarize, and you're pretty much going to explain what you've learned, but put it in your own words. This is so helpful. It really, really helps your reading, because if you can understand something and put it in your own words and maybe even share it with someone else, that's just going to reinforce your ability to comprehend what you've read and also be able to recall some of the stuff. All right, so we did that one together, but I would like you to download this Thieves reading strategy and keep this in mind for future stuff when we start to working on our reading passages. Thanks.